Today's junk journal with me is definitely one of those ones where you just have to trust the process. So I do hope you stick around and join me for this journey. I'm going to be doing day 21 of the Junk Journal January prompts. Hey, it's Meg. Welcome back to my channel. So the prompt for today is peeking out. And when I put the prompts together, I was thinking about this one in terms of maybe a pocket, and you could pop a tag inside and something would be peeking outside of your journal. And I thought, oh, that would be fun. It's more of a interactive element for our junk journals. That's a really fun way to include extra bits. So that's kind of where I was thinking about with this prompt. And then I ended up with this random piece of rubbish essentially. So the packaging that I've got here is actually from some foam pads that I used on the bottom of some of the furniture in my studio space so that it didn't scratch the floor. And when I finished peeling them all off, I thought, oh, that's kind of interesting. I could see how the circles might pop out. Maybe I'll put that to one side, as we do in our stash of all things potentially journal related. And I didn't do anything with it. And then when I came to working on this prompt of peeking out, I thought, oh, wouldn't that be fun to maybe use it as an element within my page? So my thinking here is that I'm going to stick this down on top of the illustration page that I've got in this journal page that I'm working on. And so the illustration will be peeking out, if you will, and it's quite fun, I think, because you can just see certain sections through the circles. So it was rather fiddly to get out all of the inner sections, as you can see there on the right hand side. So I did spare you the entire process of me trying to do that, and you'll see I did actually end up ripping them in the process. I thought it would be much easier to just pop them out when the first one came out, but it wasn't the case. But as you can see here, I'm just sort of laying it and seeing which parts of the illustration I want peeking out for the page. And then what I decided to do was use some mixed media, so some paint, some collage, and I didn't do anything on the things that were inside the circles. So that was the part that was the peeking out of the page, if you will. And then I did everything sort of around that. So you'll see here with the paint that I come in with in a minute, I work around the circles, so you really do have the illustration peeking out of the page. Now I came in with some pink paint, so this is one that I actually put in the junk journal kit that I put together, so that's why you're seeing a lot of this shade of pink. I mean, I do actually just really enjoy this shade of pink anyway, but that's why it's making an appearance, because I think that it's nice that it's a lot more cohesive when you use similar tones within the same journal. So you'll see here I'm kind of going around the outside. Now it was a little bit fiddly, and you might be thinking, well, why didn't you paint it before gluing it down? Good question. To be honest, the painting was just like a spur of the moment thing, so I wasn't actually going to paint it necessarily, and I quite enjoyed the process just of doing it. It was quite therapeutic, and I didn't paint the whole thing, as you'll see. I kind of painted more in the lower, like 2/3. And then as it got further to the top, I sort of went a bit more abstract with sort of brush marks and things, and had it fade out a little bit. So I didn't cover the entire page. But when I was doing this, I was really of two minds, because I thought, oh, this is like a fun thing to do, so I was trying to like enjoy the process. But then when you just have that feeling descend on you and you just think, what is happening with this page? So at this point, my trust the process had to kick in, because I thought, right, well, I've glued this now on the page, and I've made this decision. So a lot of the things I was doing was trying to think how I could not recover the page, because I didn't hate it at this point. Like, I wasn't thinking, oh, like I really wish I hadn't done that, but it wasn't quite what I had in mind. Like, when you have an image in your mind of what you think it's going to look like, and then it never does. Like, expectations versus reality here was very humbling, because I don't know why I thought it would look amazing in my head, but I wasn't so keen on how it was turning out, at least at this point. But I think that's just because this is the base layer and I didn't have any, extra colours or details or textures. It was just feeling quite flat. So I think when I come in and start adding the collage, the washi, even here coming in and adding a different colour, started to help things to come together a bit more and create a really textured page. But I mean, it was an interesting way of working and of trying to work with the fact that I couldn't work on these certain parts of the journal, like the certain sections here I'm trying to avoid, so I'm working around them. I had to figure out how I was going to include my collage, so you'll see I kind of work on the top and the bottom. I can't really work in the middle, so it was a really interesting way of doing a composition of a page, really. And I was even thinking, how do I add text to this? And you'll see in the end I actually didn't add anything, just because I wasn't sure how I wanted it to sit, and I was really trying to stick to not including anything in those circles, because I was like, well, that's the whole point of this journal page, is that it's like a peeking out moment. So I really didn't want to cover that up. And so I think I had a bit of tissue paper actually here that I let into one of the circles, but it was rather faint, so I don't think it mattered too much that it was sort of overlapping slightly, but I was trying to avoid that. And I think the paint, actually looking back on it now, did help to blend, the random rectangle shape that you see glued onto the page, because if you kind of squint your eyes, you can't quite tell that that's what I've done. But I just thought it would be a really interesting thing to, if nothing else, try out and just see. And it is kind of true junk journal style, because that is literally something that I should have just put in the bin, and I don't know why I didn't, and I hung on to it. But now we have this interesting page layout, which I wouldn't necessarily have done something like this had it not been for that particular layout of this packaging piece. With the circles, and how uniform they are as well. It's quite interesting that you have those 12 really like uniform circles, and then I've got the really organic collage going on the top and the bottom. So there's quite a lot of contrast there, I think, with how I'm assembling this page. And you can see I'm kind of creating a bit of a border, really, when it comes to the collage and working around it and trying to use things with different tones as well. So the washi, faux washi strip that I used there, I tried to pick something that had, a bit more texture to it as well. And then I was thinking, how can I add even more interest, but not in the center of this page? And something I really like to do is to add stitching around the edges of some of my pages. So I thought, well, this would be perfect, and it kind of feels like it's peeking out on the edge of the page as well, because you obviously see it on the reverse as well. So in that sense, it's kind of sticking with the prompt slightly, but it was also just really fun. Like, I do really love to add the stitching along the bottom, and I used a sort of dusky pink thread for this, so I didn't want anything that would clash too much with this one, because I really wanted the focus to be in the center on those circles. So I didn't want anything that would draw your eye away from that. So that's why I picked a color that was fairly similar to what I already had on the page, but it gives that texture, and it's a really fun way to just add something else to the bottom of the page, something that isn't collage or paint. So the stitching, I always find, just adds a nice touch to the bottom of a page. And I did think about going all the way around, but then, as you can see, it took me a little while just to go along the bottom here. And this footage is sped up 1.5, so it took even longer than this. I don't know why. I found it so fiddly to work across the bottom of this page in particular. And you can see I'm sort of going just in a random line here. I'm not bothered too much about everything being like completely straight. I quite like the fact that it feels a lot more organic, to be honest. And I think once I'd started adding these little details, so the stitching, and as you'll see in a moment with just some like scribbling with my Neocolor or the white paint marker additions as well, I think that's when it started to feel like it was coming together a little bit, because like I said at the beginning, it was definitely like a trust the process. What have I decided to do today, and how can I make it work as a page? But I really enjoyed the mixed media feel that this had as well, because the previous page, you know, I'd worked a lot more just collage, and it felt, I mean, I do like it, but it just has a different feel, doesn't it, when you purely work just with collage versus, you know, adding a little bit of paint and things here. And I think I'm starting to find that middle ground of where it's not too much paint, but it's also not just plain collage. I really like the way that you can sort of play with the different details and things, and the texture, I think, as well, especially with like the collage cluster up at the top and at the bottom as well, and the way that you can have all those tiny little details in a small section. I think that's what I really enjoy about pages like this. And I actually brought out my number stamps, so I know I put these as well in the kit, and I was like, oh, I'm gonna use this for, like, you know, if I want to date the page, and then I haven't dated any of the pages as I've gone through this journal, so I figured let me see if I can use these number stamps to date this page. And what a fun way to do it than actually using one of the circles to stamp the 2 and the 1 for 21. I actually really like the way that turned out, and it felt like it really fit in with the page, rather than sometimes when I date them it feels like it's stuck on. Like, I can't describe it, like it feels like it's not part of the page. It just feels like I'm dating it for dating its sake. Whereas I think that actually, because it was inside one of the circles, it kind of became a bit of like a design feature almost, and I really loved the way that it looked. I felt like it kind of finished off that top corner there. And I'm just coming in here with some sections of one of my favorite like vintagey washi tapes. This is by the brand MT, and I love some of the certain sections, especially with the text, so I thought that would be fun to add on in certain places. And so, despite being unsure about this page as I was working on it, I found myself reaching that point where you feel like you need to stop before you add too much to it, and you've kind of ruined what's going on. So I was just adding some bits there to kind of help it bleed over into the next page. And I'm not sure whether I'll work on the right hand side or whether I will just leave the floral element as is, because it feels like quite a busy page. I don't know, maybe it needs like a tag on it or something. I'm not sure. What would you do on this page? Would you leave it as is, or would you flip over to the next page for the next prompt? So I'm just adding some final little details here with a green pencil here, just to darken some of the areas of the leaves and help them really stand out. It doesn't quite pick up on camera, but you can see in person it adds a little bit of depth. But that is everything that I did for the prompt of peeking out. So I hope you enjoyed watching the process of this page come together. It was definitely a journey. It was an interesting one. So I hope you have a wonderful rest of your day, and I'll see you guys in the next one. Bye guys.